I've got Keith Brown with me by video chat. We're talking by Zoom today. Keith Brown is a music host and producer at Interlochen Public Radio, our friends up north, a little bit way up north there. But we already have one of your syndicated programs from Interlochen airing on our station. And I'm delighted to say that your program, Keith, Gameplay, is going to be airing here on WGTE. That's on Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock. Beginning in July. We look forward to that. And let me welcome you to FM 91 to tell us a little bit about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me and for celebrating this music with me. So as regards the show itself, Gameplay is a project that started back in about right around 2019, and it's been an amazing journey to work on it. I was asked. Actually, I was in a radio meeting, a regular meeting with our executive director, Peter Payette, and I was going on about something, passionately about having read an article. I believe it was an article in the Times. He had to help me remember this, but it was an article in the New York Times about the art of video games. And I've been a passionate, gamer as well as musician my whole life. So, the article was preaching to the choir, so to speak, but I was really passionate about playing, and I always have been, about playing game music on the air and introducing people to this incredible variety and quality of music. And he just heard me talk about it, and he said he picked up on something and just said, you can probably tell it's a subject I'm very passionate about. And he said, could you do a weekly show about the music of games? And of course, my heart leapt into my throat. Excitement. I was just about jumped out of my chair, and I thought, oh my gosh, what a project, please let me do this project. I would love to do it. And then I thought, certainly there must be many other shows already about this on the classical airwaves. And I was shocked to hear that there really weren't. Although I would be remiss not to mention two terrific podcast related shows that are more interview focused, done by Emily Reese and Kate Remington. Those are both wonderful radio hosts who do their own shows interviewing artists. Primarily, that's the focus. But really, there wasn't a show of this format, a music show out there in syndication. And so I just dove in and had the joyful task of researching, music from my childhood and also getting in touch with the field of game music today, which is unbelievably interesting and varied and complex. And I got to say that it's my literal job to learn about this music, listen to it, stay in touch with it. Yeah. And I am blown away by something. I kid you not, I'm blown away by something new every single day. And it's just a constant stream of surprise and delight. So yeah, this is really about celebrating that music and all of its creators and artists.
Well, that enthusiasm, that wonder that you bring to your journey of discovery, you pass it on to the listeners, I have to say as well. You have the greatest job, right? You get to play video games for research, basically.
That's right.
Yeah, I know it's a little more involved than that, but I'm really struck by how you're able to weave a little history into some of these presentations as well. The history of video game music is kind of like the history of electronic music. It's so tied into technology. Mm-hmm. And you talked in your most recent episode, I should mention, which is the first episode of your second season. It has one title, Mario. Everybody will know what that means. It has 3 exclamation points, just in case you missed, what you intended to talk about in that episode. But you mentioned something called chip music, which is like the 8-bit, the old, we think of like Atari video games, and people of my generation are familiar with that 8-bit music. And I'm struck by not only the history you give, but also the way that it has affected everything that came after it. And I think there's a direct relationship between how classical music, developed and flourished. And then on a shorter scale of time, you have the evolution of video game music as well. Can you talk a little bit about the similarities between those two stories, those two worlds?
I love that you said that. It's something I think about a lot, and it's a great way to connect people to this repertoire and this tradition who may be new to it. Because, like you said, the early era of game music, it's easy for us to forget that this is a nigh 50-year tradition of music that we're building upon now. And I would say that the different eras, especially the early eras, you're referring to the 8-bit era, the first home consoles that existed, like the Nintendo Entertainment System and the arcade cabinets. These composers their story was really very much one of working within limitations. And it's like, the sort of challenge for any early composer was you've got just a few timbres to work with. You have just a few voices you can use at once. What's the most catchy, what's the most interesting layered experience you can provide? And I often equate it with people to, it's a little bit like keyboard composers working with the harpsichord. Harpsichord, Domenico Scarlatti is working with an instrument that you only have so many notes you can play, and you can't vary your volume. So what do you do? How do you create dynamic interest? How do you, you get creative. You make people make people play 10-note chords, use all their fingers to hit the keys that are close, right? So composers had to get creative. And it's in the earliest days of game music, the limitations of, as you alluded to, the hardware and the software was so limited. And many of the earliest game composers, before there were a whole lot of people devoting their careers to it, even in the 70s, there was a lot of coding music by hand. There was no way to sit at a MIDI keyboard in the early days. This was well before that. So in order to actualize your music, you had to be able to engage a sound chip with assembly language. So a lot of the early composers were programmers, maybe even more than composers. And but of course there were innovators even in the earliest days. And then slowly over time, the hardware capabilities expanded. But really, the early eras of many decades of game music were characterized by composers figuring out creative ways to work within those limitations. And then also with games, you're dealing with a medium that's like no other. This is an interactive medium. So how do you solve the problem of writing music for an experience where you don't know what the player is going to do exactly? You don't know how long they're going to spend in this one area. So how do you create a varied experience musically? I think is fascinating.
Well, you talk about the different worlds of video game music. And on one hand, you've got, things like the Mario theme or Adventures of Zelda or something. It starts to get more cinematic, with Final Fantasy. You've got these great sweeping orchestral sounding tracks. I mean, there's
Yes.
such a huge difference between all the various worlds of video game music. Have your eyes been opened at all in the research you've done to maybe something new or interesting that you were unaware of?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. I a million times, yes. I would say that it's been wonderful for me as an enriching experience because I got to tell you, it's hard to even express to people who are new to listening to game music how varied and rich the tradition is. And even as someone like myself who grew up steeped in it, at the same time, I'm really blown away getting back in touch with it. And I found myself actually with the sort of fun problem as I started researching this stuff that, game music draws upon so many influences, and it's every era of traditional classical music, Western classical music, every era of traditional music of different cultures, rock. I had to learn about, prog rock. I've gotten really into like prog rock of the 70s because, and I was a metal kid, but I wasn't really into prog rock before, but there's a huge influence of progressive rock and in game music. But, really you can look at almost any genre and find something, and also mashups and mixtures of genres that just you don't find them anywhere else. And so I found that I really had to broaden my mind, and it's been lovely. I've heard more great music from J-pop to hard rock to just gorgeous like Japanese traditional music, and on and on. And yeah, it's been a very enriching experience for me, and I very much hope that it is for listeners too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What games have you been playing lately? What's on your game playlist right now?
Aha. Now, so I had actually, so a few years ago, we had our child and our little toddler. As you can imagine, uh, you know, the time that I once had to play has changed a lot. And so I have found that my time to play games has been actually really limited, which is sort of a funny thing, considering what I do and what my focus is. But I can say that the sort of bite-sized experiences that I've been having have been. I recently played a kind of an indie classic from the last decade. Is called Undertale, and that game is a joy to play because it actually it's almost entirely the work of one man, Toby Fox, who wrote all the music and also did most of the programming and much of the design and writing as well. It's a very fun game, and it's kind of a love letter to the games, the Japanese role-playing games of like the 16-bit era. So the music is this eclectic combination of live instruments. There are a few live instruments. There's chip music from different eras. There's a little bit of synth, kind of retro synth sound. And it's just such an interesting palette. And I had a lot of fun playing that one. And there's a game that came out a couple of years ago. It's very it's going to take me a lot of time to get through it. It's called Disco Elysium, and it is I know what a wonderful world games are, right? You get names like Disco Elysium, but it's a very involved game with a lot of it's a role-playing game with lots of detailed conversation, and post-apocalyptic, has a wonderful kind of synth soundscape, sort of a sonic palette too. So those are the ones that I'm kind of dabbling with right now. But yeah, these days I have to mostly, I find myself watching gameplay videos and stuff on YouTube a lot of times to familiarize myself with, in some cases, games that, I'm just trying to get in touch with the music and see how it's used in the game. And as you can imagine, so many games some games that come out now, the really large experiences can be hundreds of hours of content to explore. And obviously for expediency, I have to get the cliff notes and kind of just, watch through someone else's eyes.
Well, and you also have different groups that are basically doing covers of these melodies and of these tunes. I mean, there's a whole world out there of musicians who have done recordings based on, the Mario theme or any particular theme that they've heard. I mean, where are you finding a lot of this stuff? Do you have a kind of a go-to source outside of YouTube, or?
Oh, I do. And actually, I'm very passionate about supporting the artists that create this. There's game music being as eclectic as it is, there are soundtracks that are recorded at Abbey Road in London, and on the biggest scoring stages in Hollywood and Nashville and so on. And it goes all the way down to just thousands of incredibly creative indie artists all over the world. And so I love supporting a platform called Bandcamp. That's one, it's an online platform. It has an app, much like Spotify, but it allows you to purchase music directly. It's also like a pay as you want, to pay what you want to support your artists. And they're very artist forward. So I really like using gameplay to obtain things. I have to say, I'm lucky to be in the position that I do have some connections in the industry who reach out to me and will share music. In a few cases, I have the delightful pleasure of being able to listen to things for which there is no official release, but things that are okayed for broadcast. So sometimes I get things shared, and that just makes my little nerd heart pound, when I get these. I absolutely love that stuff. But yes, I would say it's really a hodgepodge, and I can say I'm a collector myself of game music. I love collecting all great music, but I've really gotten into that scene, and you have to just learn where to look online to find sometimes tough to find CDs, especially those from the 90s, can be very hard to locate. And I just try to be creative and open because, I would say Bandcamp is one of my big sources, but occasionally I'll have to use iTunes. Occasionally an industry contact will share something.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, you do all the work and we'll reap the rewards, right? We can just sit back and enjoy all the hard work that you brought to the show. Before I let you go, tell me a little bit about your own background. You have a classical music background, right?
I do. I was going to tell you, Brad, it's funny because I think you and I are, you're the only other person I know who is this sort of odd, funny trifecta of you are in radio and in voiceover and with a background in opera. And so that's my background is in opera, although depending on how far back you want to go, I was a trumpet player before that and a recorder player before that. I
played the bassoon and the saxophone, if that counts.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yeah, I was a trumpet player for up through my first year of conservatory at Cincinnati. I was a trumpeter, and then my background was in opera. I re-auditioned and switched over to classical voice, and I was really focused on singing concert and opera for not quite 10 years. And right around the time that right around the time that we landed up here in Michigan, amidst the pines. I started working with the radio here with classical IPR right around the same time that I got into some voiceover work too. And my specialty was audiobook narration for a while. I still do some of it. I still have some kind of longstanding clients that I work for, but now I've kind of moved over and I'm now full time with the radio station. So yeah, my background is really it's music and opera. And then I kind of transitioned over to some voice acting and then working on the microphone, which is just a lovely, getting to share the stories of music and art is it's a real privilege to be able to do that. So
yeah, well, you can see the connection between all of your pursuits. They're all involving the voice. We should mention to folks that want to listen to more than one episode a week. They can binge listen to your program at the website. It's at interlochenpublicradio.org, right? Folks can find it.
That's right. There. You can go there and you'll find a gameplay show page where all episodes will be posted after they've gone to air. And then you can look at, full track lists for the episodes too. And then, yes, of course, you can stream then on demand. And we also have an app for anybody that wants to listen through a free app. And that's also just called Interlochen Public Radio. Yeah.
Normally, I wouldn't tell people to go to your app, but I'll make an exception this time.
I feel very
it's a
lucky,
great show. It's a great show. I can't wait to share it with our listeners. And we don't want to miss anything. So we're going to start with the first season, right? Even though you're in production of the second season now. So folks, if they want to skip ahead and listen to that Mario episode that we talked about, that's available on your website. Otherwise, tune in locally here at 91.3 WGTE Tuesday nights at 10 o'clock. We're going to start in July with that. Keith Brown, the host of Gameplay, wonderful program from Interlochen Public Radio. Thanks so much. Are you going to give us a little harp playing before we go?
Oh, I wish I could. You should hear my toddler plays very well, as you can imagine. Probably better than I.
All right, we'll save that for next time. But you have to at least learn to touch a theme on there or something like that you can play, right?
Right.
Well, Keith, thanks so much for spending some time telling us about this great new show. We look forward to airing it here on FM 91.
What a pleasure, Brad. Thank you so much.
Okay.